Hey, this is Mikey Lynch from the Uni Fellowship of Christians, and I'm here with Greg Cooper, a songwriter and speaker who is passionate about music's ability to open up our minds and hearts and to bring comfort. His latest EP, South of the River, was released in late 2022, reflecting on the difficult pandemic years and the stories of hope that emerged in adversity. We'll be talking about one of the songs from that EP, particularly during our time together today. Having recently served as music and gatherings pastor at St Jude's, Carlton, and similar roles in Sydney, Greg is currently completing theological study at Ridley College and loves attending City on a Hill in the heart of Melbourne, a city that is notoriously without hills. He was a member of worship band Garage Hymnal and has written extensively for churches, with songs such as Hear Our Prayer being sung at churches across the nation. Having previously worked as a lawyer in areas of social justice, Greg also enjoys sharing the life-transforming work of compassion with churches throughout Australia. Greg was down here in Hobart for a Uni Fellowship of Christians pre-evangelistic concert event last night, and we thought we'd use the time while he was down to also do a recorded songwriting workshop, which we're doing now. Hey Greg, how you doing?
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for agreeing to doing this.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah, we originally talked about doing it in person with a bunch of people. That didn't quite work out, but hopefully this means a bunch more people get to sit in on the virtual version anyway.
Whether it's in their car or on the train or in a tram.
And this can be like the extended advert for the next time we do this, right?
Absolutely.
Where people go, oh man, okay, sure, next time you're down, we'll take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about songwriting, and we're not just talking about songwriting for church songs, Hear Our Prayer or Perfect But Painful or whatever it is. Right. Although that bleeds over together. I mean, you also do singer-songwriter stuff for... how do we define that? Like, is it one is for worship, one is for performance? But that feels weird. Is performance is... do you have a word for the categories that captures the two?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think I started out writing songs that were personal.
Yeah.
So I never knew anything different, and then there came a time where it became more fitting to write some songs for churches. So for me, writing songs for churches was like the extra bit, the kind of add-on bit, the kind of writing to brief, if you know what I mean, because there's a very particular set of things you have to be able to do for a congregation to sing a song, and the theology has to be really robust, and melodically it has to be very kind of easily picked up.
We had a conference recently where it was a really good band,
right.
but they were doing like an arrangement, a bit more of a kind of, I don't know if it's modal or what the word is for the kind of backing to it.
Sure.
But they just didn't have enough of a beat for the congregation to keep to the beat. But the song leader really quickly picked up what was going on, and they just started clicking to help people catch the beat. Do you know, because the chords are all just kind of floating everywhere, do you know, and the drums are on, various offbeats, and we were all really struggling, and it was just so smart that he went, oh, hang on, this is the music sounds awesome, but this is congregational singing. I need to give them something to hang their ears onto.
Yeah, and you're really going for something that even the non-musician can hopefully latch onto.
Yeah.
But as time's gone on, I'm giving you a long answer because it's something something I'm constantly thinking about. As time has gone on, I feel like my impression of congregational singing has shifted. I think the bar is very high for congregational singing. I think almost what we're doing is like singing creeds.
Yeah.
Because we're owning these lyrics together.
Yep.
And then we're being asked to sing them out. And I feel like that's often why you get people who are perhaps concerned about church music or have really strong opinions is because we're asking them to own those words and not just hear them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a liturgical role to our congregational singing about giving us a corporate identity. And so... long story short, I would say with church songs, we're writing something for the corporate people of God that people can universally agree to.
Yeah.
With personal songs, we're giving, a personal experience of God.
Yeah.
And we're saying that this might be your experience too. And we hope it might help you in what you're going through.
Yeah.
Because obviously there are common themes that people are going to experience in life at a personal level, but one person's particular journey shouldn't be sung by everyone,
Well, a huge example of that is like those imprecatory psalms, right? And my daughter, you met her, or at least saw her last night at the concert, and she was commenting, the psalms talk a lot about enemies.
Right.
And we're going, like if you're an early Iron Age king surrounded by literal people who want to take over your people group, And then, you've got the king who's on the throne also is slowly going insane and is trying to spear you to the wall. Like, he literally has life-threatening enemies.
Yeah.
And so it's not paranoia, or at least just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. And so in that context, we can then understand why the psalmists will pour out this rage to God. But in doing so, they're handing over judgment to God, aren't they?
Yeah.
But that's not saying that you, Greg, need to go, I was really convicted by that psalm this morning. I feel like I need to fan into flames my rage at my enemies more.
I know.
That's not why the psalm was written, was it? And so it may be your experience.
Yeah.
But if it's not yours, you don't need to then...
No. Universalise it or
Universalise
it.
But it helps you understand. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. There are definitely gaps in our church singing repertoire.
So we need more rage, maybe?
More rage. Rage against the machine of the world. But at the same time, I think often, as I've reflected on those gaps, I think it's often because they're harder to write about in a universal way. They're often very specific things which need contextualizing or need explanation. And the church songs that I think really land beautifully are the ones where you can literally get up and just start singing. And they're so well written that they just make sense.
Yep.
And they draw you in.
So we... Granted, there might be some people who go, we've got enough church songs, we don't need any more. But I think most people can see it, the case for why Christians would spend time and energy writing songs for congregational singing. Yeah. Culture shifts and changes, freshness engages people freshly.
Yeah.
And there's something nice about a local community singing its songs, So I think people can see the case for that as a justifiable Christian enterprise.
Yes, I like that.
But why might it also be a legitimate and worthwhile thing to do for Christians to say, what I started writing songs for self-expression, and then I ascended to write songs for church.
Yeah.
Why would I then descend again to merely write songs for self-expression? What's your case? Make a case for us.
Make a case.
Or at least reassure those who already on some level go, well, I'm going to whether I'm allowed to or not.
Yeah.
How can we kind of, in a sense, be an encouragement to that instinct impulse?
Absolutely. Well, God gifts us. We don't gift ourselves, right? And so if you have a gift, there's plenty of scripture to back up the idea of using it, exercising it, and using it to serve God's people. But what that looks like can be very different. So, you can absolutely write songs for churches. And, some might see that as ascend and have that assumption behind it as if it's somehow more holy. But I think, as I've said before, I think the purpose is just different. I think it's giving kind of expression to the corporate identity in that setting. But then the personal songwriting is an expression of creation.
I guess the same person wouldn't necessarily go, is it a waste of time to have a nice garden out the front of my house?
Correct.
We go, there's something beautiful about beauty, and it's an impulse of being in the image of God, to tend the garden in the broadest sense. Yeah. So,
and to create like God creates. And
you can cook for church potluck, but what are you doing wasting time cooking a nice meal at home?
So Sharon, my wife, and I talk about this a lot. But really, if you start thinking about creativity, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you can decide to be a creator in anything you do. When I write a text message to someone, I can write it really functionally with no punctuation and get the job done. Or I can take real care in the way that I construct the message and actually have tone and heart and show my care for a person. That's creating, you know. Now, there's a place for both those things. I'm not saying every text message needs to be, an essay. But
iambic pentameter.
Correct. Although I'm sure people do that. But just to say, there is that role of, I think, imaging God, which is who we are. I think as well, realizing that there is a place for people in the church to receive music outside of the congregational experience on a Sunday morning as well is really important. So, people's commutes to work, making dinner, doing the housework, or sitting and just reflecting, having music to kind of accompany people in those times.
Yeah.
I think one of the great gifts of song, and this has been my own experience in my own life, is that great songs often give expression and give you words that you can't find yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going through something, and often one of the experiences of suffering, for example, is it often takes our words away from us.
Yep.
So to be able to kind of provide some words that might articulate what people are going through at that time is really important. On the lighter end, just to provide joy, lightness, beauty. Yep. I mean, there's a whole other category you can open up, like a theology of beauty and aesthetics, and, you know, God is a God who cares about his creation and pays attention to detail and clearly values beautiful things. We only need to look around us. What I love about music, though, if you think about it, it's completely unnecessary. If you really get serious about it, you go, oh, there's just no need. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't need music to be able to get through a day. Like I need air or I need food, and yet God still created it as a gift. And as you look throughout the scriptures, I think singing and song is just like an assumed language. It's just there as assuming people will express themselves that way.
Yeah.
So, you know, Hannah's song, it's like quite personal. There are personal songs throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
Not everything is all about the corporate experience.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can argue a case for it, but I think some things are, you know, self-evident.
Yeah. And it wasn't like you talked about the necessary, unnecessary, and we're about to hit on a pandemic song, but it was an interesting experience I think many people had, that one of the things they gravitated to was creative arts as one of the bedrocks in the midst of that whole kind of lockdown era, that it wasn't sort of like, oh, I just need to do the functional things at that point, but it's actually, oh wow, there's a renewed, you know, and I mean, those who already loved music really loved those who did put on their little kind of home studio and kind of little concerts to camera, and those kinds of things. And there was an appreciation of you know, and like we talked about gardening as that another form of creative art, but that as well, like people suddenly kind of rediscovering their backyard or their windowsill, and you know,
I was watching an interview with Ethan Hawke the other day, the actor. And he made that very point, you know, he's like, in good times, art is luxury, you know, but in the bad times, art is sustenance. And he's so right. Yeah. Because, you know, I've thought about this a lot, you know, if I'm in a doctor's waiting room, for example, and there's like TV on or smooth FM, you know. Like at one level, those things are completely incidental. Yeah. At another level, they actually are really helpful in those difficult moments where it's like, oh, I just need something to latch onto. Yeah. I just need some reminder that there's beauty out there. Yeah. In this clinical, difficult experience, I need some reminder that actually there's good things in the world. And smooth FM in that moment does it for me. You know, like, hopefully there are also Christian songs that will take us to that.
Do you think of yourself as, like, in terms of your kind of performance, non-congregational stuff, do you think of yourself in the category also being like Christian music, or do you think of yourself as a musician who happens to be Christian? This is more like a genre category question. Yeah, like, do you think of yourself as I'm in the Christian music industry, or I'm in just in the music industry, I happen to be a Christian?
I have oscillated. Yeah. Okay. Right now, I see myself as a Christian musician. Yeah. You know, in the Christian music industry. Yeah. On any release that I put out, I usually have a couple of really overt Christian songs. Mm-hmm. But I usually also have songs that are informed by my faith and informed by my experience of God, but may not use explicit Christian language. In fact, probably don't. Well, even in the concert last night, we did Crowded House and Tears for Fears, so we were even covering stuff that wasn't just covering other Christian musicians, but it was a Christian concert. That was, but what I love, and we've talked about this a lot, throughout our chats, but I feel like to be able to engage with the world is absolutely part of the Christian experience. Yeah. You know, we don't live in a bubble. So to be able to reference another beautiful song, so last night I sang 4 Seasons in One Day by Crowded House, you know. To be able to reference a song like that, which frankly sounds like a hymn to me, and is beautifully poetic and refers to the notion of seasons, which is like thoroughly biblical. Yeah. And tries to grapple with those kind of movements and phases of life. Yeah. As a Christian, I want to go, that is, firstly, incredibly beautiful piece of music, and all humans are made in God's image, and so we have to give God due honour for that and praise for that. that the songwriter Neil Finn and Tim Finn are imaging God in the way that they, even if they, who knows if they acknowledge that or not, but, and then, and secondly, to just say like, there is great merit in us seeing the value in stuff that doesn't come out of the church, you know, just like you go and see a great movie, you go and see a Marvel movie, you know, they're not all going to be great, but there are great moments in them, there's beautiful stuff, there's storytelling, there's all this stuff which we can just be thankful for. Yeah. And so I think with music, I tend to have that mindset of my experience of life is not all lived in the church. In fact, most of my life is outside of the church walls. And so I'm walking through the world just like anyone else. And so my experience that comes up in songwriting is often going to be a reflection of that, but landing in my faith and landing in my relationship with God. So
before we drill into some how-tos, and we're going to do that by pulling apart a song, a particular song, and what went into creating it and why it's structured the way it is, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be fun. But there was an Onion article a few years ago that said, find the thing you really love and then do it on weekends and late at night, and in the cracks of your life when you're half awake, as kind of, you know, false inspirational kind of reality check to go like that's most people's experience. And I guess we were reflecting on how weirdly rare it is, even if lots of people appreciate what you do, how rare it is for people to actually say, hey, Greg, I really appreciate what you do. Keep up the good... Like, that's actually a really rare thing. Because maybe people assume someone else is saying it, or who am I? I don't know. Who knows why? But that's a relatively common thing for people if they're doing this extra thing. That it's, encouragement is rarer to come by than you'd think. So we've got an audio opportunity, hopefully, out there. There are lots of little Gregs, I don't know, other people who are would-be writers, and maybe some of them feel discouraged or like, what's the point of this? And maybe some feel a bit of that meekness of going, oh, well, that's not really, you know, this is a frivolous thing, it's not really a Christian thing, you know, whatever it is. So what's a word of encouragement? We could be that person. What do you want to say to the would-be songwriters, including those who aren't even writing for church, but for some other audience or even just for themselves?
Absolutely. Just to pick up your first point about, you know, how we do art and whether it's a full-time thing or whether we make heaps of money off it, or that, because this is all part of it. I personally made a decision many years ago that I was not going to be a full-time artist, that I didn't want to put the pressure on the art to make it the thing that sustained my life. And so when I came out of university, I worked as a lawyer, and then I did art in the cracks. But I found there were very few cracks because a profession like law is just so completely all-consuming. And so I eventually, for a few reasons, I stepped away from that, moved into ministry, and particularly music ministry, and so that gave me more opportunities to blend my creative life with my work life. But just to say, there is absolute validity in doing art late at night, on the weekends, in the cracks. We've developed a society expectation of art that it should be full-time, and that it should be a money earner, and there should be a big money earner, and that art equals... art needs to sort of be commodified. But actually, that's a very recent thing in history. And actually, the wider span of history really practiced sort of art for its own sake, for beauty as its own reward type thing.
Except for the very elite kind of patron church court stuff.
But even the patron model was very different. So
that's right. It's not a market model, is it?
It's not a market model. It's a patron model, which says, actually, we believe so much in what you do that we're going to provide you with a salary or whatever to make sure you can do that.
Good point.
And that's how kind of record labels worked over the last 40 years or whatever as well. So anyway, just that background, I think it's important just to be able to say...
It's legitimate, even if it's not, you know...
In fact, I would even go so far as to say I think there's real health in having a structured job or study or something during the week or during the days or some of the days in the week that give you that opportunity to kind of structure your life, have a regular income.
But this is the thing, like the career incomes that record companies, pre-streaming, were able to provide from the 1950s onwards was often very bad for the human beings who made it, wasn't it? Like, it really is not good for humans to be a rock star by and large, or you need a lot of artificial structure to stay healthy, doing that. It's really been a terrible tragedy becoming famous.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's right.
So it can be healthy actually to have these other structures.
Particularly for the Christian, because I think so much of, I hinted at it before, but the idea of the corporate identity, like that's scripture, right? Like, New Testament is addressing largely the corporate identity, and obviously Old Testament as well. So, for us, it's core to our identity to say which community am I embedded in, and am I committing to regularly? And I think this is not against the touring musician, absolutely not. Like that's an absolutely valid and wonderful thing. But I do think the regularly touring musician who's a Christian needs to find ways of being deeply embedded in community.
Yep.
So, all that to say, absolutely have the structure, the day job, the whatever, that can give you structure, give you some finances to support and make your art. And then as to the art encouragement thing, everyone has such a varied story with this. Like, people who were kids and maybe had piano lessons and it didn't go so well, like, still carry that wound. And that's a legit wound. Like, I hear terrible stories of people who went to a piano lesson and were told, you'll never learn piano, or you should never this, or just these kind of absolute phrases. So there's
it's like a prophecy over your life, isn't it? Yeah.
To which I just think, what did that person have to gain from doing that? Why? Can we not just be a bit more kind of open-minded?
So my brother and I both did, more the compulsory kind of growing up piano lessons thing, and I was more temperamentally inclined to that than he was. He didn't love it, and it was actually him then picking up the guitar separate from the whole AMEB, using just like how to play the guitar, and he was the one who ended up at the Conservatorium of Music out the other end. But it was, and that goes to show it was more about the pedagogy, or even just what instrument vibed with him better, or whatever, or contemporary music rather than classical, whatever it was. We got outside of that, and suddenly, he was the muso, not me. So there you go.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, those voices are real, and they will keep coming up. But I think for the Christian artist, knowing that your gift is God-given, and that this is actually ultimately a conversation between you and God, to come to Him regularly and say, God, thank you for this gift, and what do you want me to do with it? Would you please show me what I should do with it? Would you please give me the opportunities, the relationships, the skill development, all that sort of stuff. And my deep sense is that most people are creative. I'm not saying they're necessarily artists who create, heaps of stuff, but I think people's temperament and wiring is to be creative. And I think we, as a society, have kind of lost, particularly here in Australia, have lost a sense of treasuring how good creativity can be. I think it's much more common in Europe to really value that. And then I've done a bunch of trips to Nashville, and it's just widely accepted that musicians are valued and treated as equals. So there is a sense in this country particularly of, oh, you're an artist, but what do you really do? That is so common.
Yep.
And so I think just kind of laughing at that a bit and smiling and being like, well, actually I do a couple of things, and one is not more real than the other.
Yes.
And art, just because it's not earning my whole salary for the year, doesn't make it less valid or less beautiful. Or, but I honestly think there are things we know we just have to do deep down.
Yeah.
And for my own experience is that songwriting and music is a tap. Like I just can't turn off. The ideas just keep coming, and at the end of the day, I just love to pick up a guitar and plug in my electric guitar and get lost in that world, for example, and just create. Or I love to sit and reflect on an idea and just kind of come up with lyrics, even if no one ever hears them. Yeah. There's beauty in just creating, and so, as you said before, it's very rare for people to come up, and there is often encouragement in the form of, thank you for that was great, or that was beautiful. there's very rarely a sense of people coming up to you and saying, you should really be doing that.
Yes, yeah, that's a good distinction.
Yes.
There's the thumbs up kind of thing, but then there's
Yes.
a different thing for people to say that word and
Yes.
go, what you're doing is valuable.
Yes.
Chase that, follow
Yes.
that. Yeah.
I can count probably on one hand the number of times that's happened in my life. And that's okay. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Because I have no doubt of the way God has kind of wired me and what I need to be doing. But it's taken a while probably to get to that place.
But it's helpful for the person maybe listening to this who goes, maybe I'm kidding myself fiddling around with the piano because no one has said that, important people haven't said this thing to me. But we're actually saying, it proves nothing because most artists don't have people saying that kind of mentor word, or very rarely. So don't assume that you've got to wait for that to happen as an evidence, because it's actually rarer than you think.
It's really rare, and people often need to just be shown. So a classic example is, you put on a gig and you just invite people along and you just show them what you do without talking about it. I heard a great quote which was, talking about music is like dancing about architecture. It just makes no sense, right? Like sometimes people trying to explain to people what you do with music or why it's good. There are limits to that. Sometimes just show them and let God join the dots for people. But I think it's probably true of any career or any profession to a certain extent, that at a certain point, you have to just have the courage of your convictions, as they say. So have the conviction and then have the courage to act on those convictions and just go with it.
Yeah, because they talk about imposter syndrome, don't they?
Yeah.
In any number of fields.
That's right.
Like you say. It's do I really belong in the room with the other managers?
Yeah, that's right.
Or lawyers or small business owners. Who am I kidding? They all know that I'm not the real deal, but everyone else is thinking that. I remember that as a teenager in the kind of the kind of hip kind of punk music scene, kind of feeling like I was the one desperately wanted to fit in, and everyone else was completely comfortable in their own skin. And it was just that paradigm shift moment to go, actually, probably every single person at this gig is self-consciously looking around at everyone else, assuming someone else totally belongs. And we do that right through our adult lives, right? We're consciously, we're still in the high school kind of hallways, aren't we? So checking to see who's the person who belongs, and do they realise that I don't belong? And will I be found out?
But what's cool about art is that God has given you, each individual, a unique voice. So we can often assume it's a version of the imposter syndrome. It's when you're writing a song, you can assume, someone else will have written this, or someone else can write this. Or, I want to say, no, they can't. God has given unique voice and unique thoughts and words and perspectives to everyone. I mean, there is no one who's lived exactly the same life as each of us, right? And so being able to write or paint or photograph or whatever out of that place is really important. But I think what sort of sets art apart from a lot of these other careers that we've just mentioned is that there's no pathway. I can't sign up to a course that's like, these are the steps for writing a song, for producing, to releasing. I mean, you can do like, don't get me wrong, you can do sort of music diplomas and stuff that have that. But what I mean is like the actual just doing it year after year after year is ultimately just a personal conviction and is the personal work of getting up.
And I gather from con students that that's actually what those sort of elective type subjects often admit, right?
Right.
So here you are being trained, to be qualified with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in music, and now we've got the workshop subject that says, now here's what your career will look like, which may be a total patchwork and unpredictable. So that's even when you are in the course, that's the poorly kept secret. Very few of you'll end up being even fifth violin in an orchestra somewhere in a stable way.
That's right.
You'll all be a mix of the hustle and the whatever. Yeah.
And I think there's often a natural and fair disappointment with that. Like I think we maybe set our sights on a certain thing and we see our idols we've looked up to, and but at any given time the industry looks different from the year before, and there are different market forces at work and all that sort of stuff. So I think just being realistic about what the market and the industry looks like at any given point.
It's like we've even talked about with the Christian music industry, and even live music for Christian stuff has ebbs and flows. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then saying, okay, well, what is the unique wiring or makeup that I have that I can actually utilize and honor God with?
Yeah.
And it may look like full-time music, all glory be to God, but it may look like some music, some being a gardener, some working in an accountancy firm, some like
work for a church,
work for a church, whatever, you know. And I think we probably just need to be more comfortable about that as kind of realistic expectations, but to just find great joy in the art in the midst of all that.
Well, let's switch across the second half of our time to think about actually the mechanics of writing a song, and we're going to do this rather than in general principles. We're going to begin with the specific and work out from there to general principles as we go. That's the way we're going to tackle it. So we're going to do The Same God, which is a pretty powerful pandemic song, man. Like it's a fun one. I mean, we'll be looking at even potentially talking about some of the kind of very richly produced one from the EP, but people can also listen to an acoustic version of the EP as well, which is a good example of how different just even the backing creates a different interpretation or different emphasis to how a song. Yeah. So we'll get right through to actually the production and the arrangement, but let's begin with inspiration, composition. So you know, how do you get the idea for a song? Like you've got this great song, it seems so finished and polished. Did it just drop out of the sky like the Book of Mormon? You know, what was the
Sometimes they do, very rarely, but sometimes they do, and I think the media has not done us any favours on that front. In often you read a really finely tuned press release from a big artist, and, you know, I wrote this song in less than the time it takes to sing the song. You know, like people are like, it was just the easiest thing ever. I mean, sometimes the inspiration is like that, but my experience is, and most of the artists that I know, that there may be a flash of inspiration.
A local Hobart muso said one of the things that was great about the recent Get Back documentary, the 3-part thing about the making of the Let It Be album, was how well it showed a lot of what the creative process is like, and he described it as like lava, like just this slow moving mess. As you're just watching like the song Get Back slowly get written. But you know, like obviously, you know, at the same time, McCartney woke up having dreamt yesterday.
I know.
So both had both experiences, but that was really good for showing the other side, which is what you're talking about of iterations. Yeah. So in the case of The Same God,
so it was an idea. I mean, actually, in preparation for today, I went back and looked at my demos, and there are a ton of them. So there's just like a look at my voice notes on my phone. There's just probably, I don't know, at least 20 of The Same God over different periods of time. Yeah. And the song evolved over about 5-6 months. That really started as a stream of consciousness, so it was inspiration. I mean, literally.
And your voice notes is like an author has their notebook.
Correct.
Sometimes this is a way you can catch the audio.
Yeah. So I was literally just sitting on my couch at home. Yeah. Just grab a guitar. And the first demo was like, it was a lilting country thing, like. Yeah. And then I was just rambling words. So I had like the shape of the melody that was emerging.
So did you know what it was going to be about?
No.
That is so, because...
It was an idea.
Right, because the melody is this antsy, ruminating, like I assumed it was the other way around, because I just went like it captures what it feels like you're pacing around a room.
Yeah. Well, that's what it was. It was kind of sitting, and then I was at one point kind of pacing around the room, and then listening back to the first demo, I mean, there's actually a break where I'm trying to like come up with a chorus, and it then launches into The Same God. So that series of words just comes out. In any other time, I might be planning trips, getting on the fingertips, knowing all the suns were mine. And in any other time, we might be lying low, holding close in the radio. Another time. But the same God who ruled then is the same God who rules now. Don't give up, holding your hand. So that was very natural,
Yeah,
and then I
nice.
just fine-tuned all that. So that stuff really was inspiration, but then it was like, well, what is this verse going to say? And how am I going to fine-tune that chorus as well? But the verse, I remember having the idea pretty soon after that, like that same morning about, in any other time, what would I be doing in May or whatever the month was, you know? I'd be doing this, I'd be doing that. And I'd been listening to an interview with Ivor Davies from Icehouse, who's a absolute favourite songwriter of mine. Icehouse in the 80s is just an incredible band and really a backdrop to a lot of Australian kind of life, really. But he talks a lot about the idea of writing with picture words. So words that will conjure up images for us. And so particularly because I was stuck in the living room at that point, I really wanted those words. And so... in any other time I might be free to roam. I wouldn't be cooped up here alone. And just kind of going through all those things. Hit the beach on Saturday, savor the roar of the crashing waves, listen to music like it's the best thing in the world. Just those kind of really specific, detailed things that I would love to be doing, rather than sitting in a living room day after day after day.
And is already at this point the rhythm changing to capture that? So, like, as you're playing it, obviously, it's sounding more like the end result. Was that already happening, that you're going, hang on, no, this is a different... This has a slightly different edge to it than a...
That's a great question. I couldn't actually track where the shift in rhythm happened, but it definitely shifted from being a lilting sort of back-of-the-beat country thing to a more leaning forward where you...
Which gives it that antsy feeling, right? That Correct. That feeling.
Correct. So that was really how that came about. But I didn't. That was probably about April or May of 2020, and then we recorded it in about October. So there was 6 months of sort of iterations of just, it's just like working on an essay or whatever. It's literally just revisiting it time after time after time.
Yeah.
And thinking, does that still work? Does that still work? I can vividly remember getting on a bus. I'd just been to something, and I got on a bus, and the idea of counting my plans on my fingertips came to me. I don't know why. I just looked at my hand, and that idea of fingertips came to me, and I was like, because that's often how we list things. So like, that could be cool. So drop that lyric in, and so I guess just.
Which again is a really powerful... I mean, this is me raving to you about the song, but it's powerful because on the one hand, that's immediately saying, I've got so many plans. Heaps of them because I'm free, I'm not locked up.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, that very quickly brings you back to a tight fist and back into the room again, doesn't it?
That's really well said.
It's sort of it works in both directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that, but
well, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. So this is why you create music, because people can interpret it.
Okay.
But I think what I try and do is I kind of have the net open for a time when I'm writing. So I have the initial seed, and then I try and limit myself to working on one song for a period of like a week or 2 weeks, and have the net open, and kind of say to myself, like, I just want to let ideas and phrases drop into that net, and let my brain do the subconscious work as I'm travelling about and as I'm doing my other work.
Which preachers can relate to with sermons, right? You do your early exegesis early in the week, partly so that then you go sitting with you. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then and just let it percolate in the background. And then there's a pretty, good process that just happens pretty naturally, where the good stuff remains and the bad stuff falls away. And being okay with the bad stuff falling away. But sometimes I take that bad stuff, quote unquote, that's not quite right for this song, and then just copy it into another document and just have it sitting there for inspiration. And
you might drop it elsewhere.
Yeah, because you don't want sort of things to be wasted, and you just never know where it will maybe turn up again.
Do you often, I don't know whether it's true with this song, but do you ever kind of reach out and kind of very consciously go, I want something that's a bit like what this song does, or something that, like, I love the way, how does so-and-so resolve this thing? I want to get that kind of...
Yeah.
Do you consciously do that sometimes, or is that more happening at a...
It's subconscious and conscious.
Okay.
I think, particularly when you get into the recording phase, I often, or every time I go into the studio, I give the team I'm working with a list of reference tracks.
Yeah, okay.
So this is the kind of palette of sounds I'm going for. Yep. This is the style of kind of beats and rhythms that I want to go for.
Cool. So we might come back to that then for this song.
Yeah. So that's really important, I think. it's very rare that the song ends up sounding very much like those things at all.
Yeah.
But it gives you the inspiration and the kind of reference points to get going and to just dive in and to go for it. And the rest of this song was actually, so the bridge section is really the only remaining section of this song, which is actually another song altogether that I was working on with a friend of mine.
Can we pause on that then?
Yeah,
Sure. There's several interesting structure things. So let's do each of them in turn. So again, this is now a universal principle for the songwriter out there. Like you begin writing songs and you think verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, 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 and you're done, right?
Sure.
But this one, which again fits the theme, it's actually verse, verse, verse. So that already is a ruminating sort of feeling, right?
Correct, that's a really good observation.
So that's a good thing for people to know. You don't have to go straight verse, chorus. You can actually do verse and then verse. And in this case, it's verse, verse, verse. And even then you kind of have, I don't know what you call it. What do you call it? Like a bridge or a pre-chorus?
A pre-chorus?
Yeah, so there's this one line that kind of isn't the chorus and it's not the what is it? The different lives.
We live different lives now. And so that line, just out of interest, that was a line. I'd emailed someone about not being able to do something because of the lockdown.
Yeah.
And she replied and said, "That's totally fine, Greg. We all live different lives now."
So it's like another voice speaking into the song.
Yeah, so that's another, in terms of having the net open.
So can you do that line, give us maybe run from the verse 3.
The whole world's not okay, I don't feel good today. I'm wondering when I'll next get paid. Missing the family and friends that make me who I am. We live different lives now. But the same.
And that's quite different if it just goes for who I am, but the same God.
Yeah.
Like there's something quite different that extra little, it's just a line, but it adds another dimension, which is quite interesting that it's almost another voice speaking into the song. That's cool.
Because part of it is just logically, why do I need to sing about the same God? Why am I making this point of contrast? What is this any other time I'm talking about, or any other town, like why is there this contrast dynamic going on? And I think the notion of we live different lives now is the key to that. And it can be the pandemic, or it can be any shift in your experience that you go through. I mean, illness is a big one like that. I've experienced a bunch of that in my life, and it deeply unsettles you and basically creates a new life to what you've been experiencing previously. So that notion of, well, I live a different life now, but the same God.
Yeah.
I really wanted to have something like that. And so to see a line like that in an email, I was just like, yep, that awesome. Captures it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So that's good for people to realise that, isn't it? That the structure, you can still, if something's not working or doesn't have that extra something, then realising you don't have to just go straight to the chorus.
No.
Or you could even go, I'm missing something to get me to the chorus.
Yeah. And look, there is a reality that, at the crude end, they say, don't bore us, get to the chorus, right? That's kind of but there's a reality that in music now, you want to probably get to the chorus by about the 1 minute mark at the latest.
Yeah.
It's typically much earlier than that. If you analyse most pop music, it's like usually around the 40 second mark now.
Well, there's a whole thing that's a whole other the Spotify junkyard where it's like songs go for 90 seconds, right?
Spotify junkyard.
But you know what I'm talking about.
I've hung out there for a while. I know what you mean. It's depressing. But there's a reality. Like, just modern production has pretty much ditched introductions, ditched bridges. Man,
the start of August and Everything After by the Counting Crows has like 10 seconds of silence almost.
Can't get away with that now, So we don't really let our songs breathe in the same way that we used to. But I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I'm just saying it's good to be aware of it. And particularly when you go into the studio and you start recording with a band and you start bringing it to other people's eyes, being able to have a sense of why your song has the structure that it does and why the timings may be a little different is really quite important. So you hit on it exactly when you said the 3 verses at the start is to create that sense of unease, that sense of asymmetry, of discomfort, and then but still being able to get to the chorus in a good time. I mean, I think I get there before the 1 minute mark of this song. I have to check, but
okay.
I'm pretty sure. I think it's about the 50-second mark. But.
So then here's my second take on structure, and you tell me what you think about this.
Yeah.
I feel like the structure of the song, because you already mentioned this, it's like a different song towards the end.
Yeah.
It feels to me, this ages me, and also it's a bit odd, but stick with me. It's a bit like Sweet Child of Mine.
Okay.
Like, you got Sweet Child, the main of the song, She's Got Eyes, it seems to me, first solo, it's a kind of major chord solo. towards the end of the song, the second solo is like a minor solo, and you get onto that really long, where do we go now, where do we go, and it gets, you know...
I'm not familiar enough with the song.
You gotta listen to that.
I only know the chorus. Yeah. I'm a November Rain guy.
It's quite... I mean, it's interesting because it is such just a happy, poppy song, but then the end of it is like a different beast. Yeah. And the thing that gets you to the end is... In that case, it's a guitar solo that's a minor key guitar solo and whatever. So here, we don't actually go back to the pacing around the room once you hit this hold on, right?
Yeah,
and this was really striking when you performed it last night as well.
Yeah.
That you've got this same God, and then suddenly we hit into a more confident self-talk.
Yeah.
That's taken the theology and is now kind of owning it almost, and that kind of thing. And resolves to not give in to the dark days. And then it stays positive from then, right? And then you even end with something that only appears once as well, the very final line. Could you play that final line? Because that doesn't appear anywhere else, is that right?
So it's just, faithful yesterday, today and forever. And the way it's produced in the final track is like kind of blink and you'll miss it, which is very deliberate.
Yeah, and does it even have quite a hard cut that doesn't even fade out?
Like I think there's a little like loop which keeps going. But thematically, that's the song. God is faithful yesterday, today and forever. Yeah. But I love this is a kind of a classic difference between congregational writing and personal writing. If that was a congregational song, you don't bury the lead. You don't slip that in at the end as like an afterthought. But the reason I did that here is because it took me that long in my life experience to get to that realization. Just because I know the theology doesn't mean I necessarily feel it instantly and know it instantly. I have to like go through the journey and then walk it with God for Him to help me remember that often. So I wanted to paint the song in real time, in a sense.
Yeah, it's great.
And so the hold on bridge section. I mean,
so you had that as a separate song on the shelf somewhere, did you?
I felt there was a need for something different musically to go on in the song to open it up a bit, because it's all very, as you said, like quite, there's an intensity to it, and it's all quite sort of short notes and kind of so I thought it does need a bridge, and often songs do have a bridge, or even if a very short one. But I just a couple of weeks prior to recording this song, because this bridge came in very late in the piece, a couple of weeks before recording it, I'd been hanging out with my friend Luke Woodhouse, who's a minister in Sydney, and we write songs together, and he just had this thing going, and he's like, oh, just pop around, I want you to see if you can add something to this song I'm working on. And it was called Dark, and it was just like a pulsing synth thing.
Don't give in to darkness, hold on. Don't give in to darkness, hold on. Don't give in to darkness, hold on. Don't give in to darkness. Don't give in to darkness.
So that was all just that, and I thought that would be a completely self-contained song. But then as I got close to recording this and realised it needed a bridge, I was thumbing through my phone and thinking, what are some ideas in my voice memos here? And so this one worked. And I thought it would work well because it modulates as well, so it changes key to get into that section. So I felt like it would lift the whole thing to go there.
So is there a chord progression that gets to that change of key, or does it just land on a new key?
Don't give up, no, He's got your best at heart. What gets you there is I go, ooh, hold on.
And so that then sort of sets
you've got a note which is preempting the new key, but still works over the old chord. Got your best at heart. Ooh,
and so it suddenly changes what that one chord is now, different in terms of the root. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
How fun.
So there is...
You don't have to do this kind of 4-chord kind of modulation thing.
Theoretically you do, But and I trained classically, and so that's absolutely what you're supposed to do in classical music is have like a pivot chord, they call it, or series of chords to get you into the new key, and often it's good to do that.
In this case, it's implied.
I realised it was okay to imply it here.
Jumping ahead, does anything else in the final recorded version, along with your voice? No, it's just interesting. Okay.
No, nothing preempts the new key. But if you listen to like pop music, they just jump into the new key. They don't even give a warning. They're just like, okay, I guess we're there now. So it's kind of accepted, but just musically, I wanted to make sure I kind of had some trace of classical theory in there by like preempting with a little pivot note, you might call it. Then that cycles the hold on, the hold on. I mean, we were in production, we were trying to work out how many times you're supposed to sing that. We went with 4 in the end. And then kind of ends with language is grace. And we're back to the same chorus again in a solo pattern, but we're back in the old key.
Yeah.
So again, that final note on his language is grace that I sing is the one that leads you back in.
Did you play with whether or not to go back to the old key or not?
No, I knew I wanted to get back there. I knew I wanted to get back there.
Because what's interesting is that whole section as well is all going up, right? Everything else is, even the chorus, which is positive, kind of has that sort of like Wonderwall sort of down, dropping down the chord sort of feeling.
Yeah.
Like it's still going down, right? Whereas this is all...
That's a really good point, yeah. I think getting to a place, like, I mean, if you were to graph the song, it starts quite dark, but then hopefully ends positive and optimistic, or at least optimistic. Because, theologically, you want to land at that place of He's faithful yesterday, today and forever.
Yeah.
I also think I really wanted to get that line in there of don't give in, don't give up, because I actually think that just continuing in the Christian walk is a really underrated thing.
Yep.
Just turning up.
Yeah, the number of times stand firm, endure, persevere. These are such common exhortations, aren't they?
Yeah. Do not give up meeting together.
Yeah.
That's huge, right? Like, just do it. You don't even have to do it well, although hopefully we will. But just turn up and just keep going, as we know, that's where we want to land at the end of our Christian life, is having endured. So I did want to get that in, and I think... anything that can encourage us in that journey. Yeah.
Anything else on that kind of, if you like, the demo side of things before we go then into kind of arranging and production, recording, all that?
No, I mean, that's a bit of a snapshot. I mean, it's a lot of detail for people listening, but hopefully it gives you a sense of...
Well, when do you do this?
The construction.
Like, people may not get to do... So that's why it's fun to kind of slow down.
But just so people know, like, there's that much effort required to usually bring a thing to its final kind of structure, at least.
Yeah.
And that's before you even record. So I guess the encouragement would be, take your time. There's no rush. Like, you set the time schedule, and just because a song doesn't come out in one sitting does not mean anything. And
I guess we've touched on collaboration as well, and going that's not all or nothing either. It's not like you have to write a whole song with a person, or else you can't have collaborators.
That's it.
You can have these friendships who are. Snippets maybe lent in and borrowed, and I guess you then have to. Is this
you do have to credit?
This is credited, yeah.
But I'll gladly credit, because there's no way I would have come up with that. But
that doesn't mean that you sat down with Luke and wrote the whole song with Luke.
Correct.
He has to have a same say about every single bit, any more than most of Lennon McCartney stuff wasn't written, kind of face to face. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in sort of embrace that and use it as a resource.
You can even bring... I mean, do you ever bring something where you go, it's missing something?
Yeah.
Can you give it a listen and tell me what you do? Okay.
And over time, you'll work out who your trusted collaborators are.
Because that's the thing too, right? Because there might be someone who's great, but they're just not...
Yeah.
They don't quite get what you're about, and so their suggestions are just not quite...
And that's okay. Like, I hear stories of famous songwriters who get put in a room together to work, and just nothing happens. Yeah. So they go, we actually just went for lunch because, like, we couldn't work together. And so I think working out who your trusted collaborators are is really important. And then just being open to their suggestions, particularly with congregational music. Just to quickly flip back to that.
Yeah, good.
I have a bit of a rule now that I only collaborate on congregational music. So I just think if we're going to put words and music in the mouths and hearts of that many people, it's just our responsibility to do the work as at least a duo, if not a trio or more,
cool.
to collaborate and get the thing to a place that it sits well for a few people before we go out and test it. So I have a few key collaborators that I work with in that space. And just to make sure that theology checks out and all that sort of stuff. Very different than a personal song where actually there's theology in this, no doubt. And I remember that phrase, like, he's got your best at heart. I was recording this song with Andy Judd, who's a good friend of mine and a minister and lecturer at Ridley College. And I said, he's got your best at heart. Like, am I allowed to say that? You know, like, that's kind of Romans 8 stuff, like God works for the good of those who love him, you know. And he's like, yeah, it's all right. Like, it's poetic license to say that. But, you know, I wouldn't put that in a congregational song. I think that's going too far in a congregational song, you know?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so let's then talk about, should we just do that all together? The kind of what instruments, who plays what, how high or how low, or how I got stuck on the word, but like the inversions or the voicing of the chords, and the production, all that kind of stuff. There's probably several steps to that. I don't know how much of that you do when you're recording and how much you kind of queue up in advance to bring to the studio. But what do you want to talk about? I mean, feel free to take this wherever you want to go, and maybe whatever, particularly with this song, stands out in that process.
Well, recording is such a different thing for everyone. Yeah. So some people like to just fire up their computer and do it at home, all on their own. That's totally cool. For me, I've always valued collaboration, particularly with a final product. I demo a lot on my own at home and kind of layer tracks and kind of build it up to a place where I feel like I've got the information in my head out onto the page, if you know what I mean, so that I've kind of exhausted my thoughts on a song. So I typically do that before I take it to anyone else. But I really believe in collaboration and getting a great drummer in the room and a great bass player in the room and a great keyboard player in the room. So I try and record drums and bass together. I was in a band many years ago, a worship band called Garage Hymnal, and we recorded all of our music live in the room together. So that's one extreme. It's very expensive and very time-consuming, but the music industry was different then, so we could afford to do it. But what I realised from that is that creating a rhythm section energy is really important into a track. And so for me, I love that. I also think I like the sense of occasion that comes with recording day is Monday, and get all your ducks in line and be ready to start recording, you know. And there's other people's time involved and there's money involved, and so it creates a sense of occasion and a sense of doing the work, you know.
Just quickly, do you save up and just throw money at it? Do you have patrons you bring? I mean, feel free to not talk about this if you don't feel comfortable. But how does that? Because it's quite a few zeros goes into recording.
Yeah, it's saved up.
Yeah.
Yep. That's how
there
I
you
do
go.
it.
Yeah,
and it takes time to do that.
Yeah.
And I think being cool with that is part of the process too.
Yep.
But always using the time in the meantime productively, because you can record at home for nothing.
Yeah.
And I could probably put out an album recorded at home and spend very little money on it, but I love the sense of occasion, and I love involving my friends, and I love doing that sort of thing together. And I now am very grateful to work at a studio in Sydney a lot called Church Street Studios with Sean Carey, who's an awesome producer and engineer, and so we just have a great working relationship. So it's very straightforward.
Yeah, nice.
So if you don't have a studio connection that you're so well connected with, I would say don't spend the money in the early days. I would say just get good at the craft yourself and work out how to do it for next to nothing. You know, borrow mics and get your friends over and just get comfortable with all of that before you then put money on the table.
And part of that's the comfort, I imagine, is also a certain degree of confidence, because if it's not a good relationship with the expert, they could take you to something that you're not happy with, right? But you don't have the confidence to speak up, so that's probably an element.
It's like with songwriting collaborators, you get to a place where you trust people's instincts. Yeah. Even if you don't have to speak about things very much, or you might each have an off day because we're human. Yeah, sure. But you ultimately trust people's instincts and where they'll take the project. And Sean and I particularly, when we've worked together for over 10 years now, we did an EP back in 2010 called Held Back the Sun, and then one in 2013 called Again and Again. and we've worked differently each time in different places. But he now has his home base at Church Street, and so I just know that we both have similar musical sensibilities.
Yeah.
We both have similar goals for a song, and yeah, so that works really well. And then just key musical collaborators who work on the songs with us. So yeah, shall we dive into the production? I guess just to say there is a phase called pre-production. I believe a lot of people write and record a song at the same time now with their laptop, and they're like, cool, it's done, and maybe that's cool. My personal process is writing, demoing, pre-production, recording, mixing, mastering. So it's quite involved to go from concept to completion, but for me that's how to get the best result. I just know myself, my own workflow and my own process. And so pre-production for this was I sit at home, again, when there's no studio clock running, I sit at home and I try and work out the best key for the song. I try and work out the best tempo for the song, because that's a really important thing. With this one, the tempo is very much dictated by how to sing those verse words, because it's like a stream of consciousness. In any other time, and you have to be able to get those words out fast enough so the song has momentum, but slow enough that you can actually articulate them, and that makes sense. And then
and the key, I mean, with the guitar, you can just slide a capo.
You can put a capo, so I mess around with that,
Yeah.
and everyone just working out, for everyone who might be listening, working out where your voice sits best. And
on the highs and the low notes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
work out the range, and I experimented with a few different keys. Listening back to the first demo, my guitar was actually tuned down a semitone, because I thought it might be better in like E flat minor, but it was way too dark. So
Interesting.
So sitting in E minor where it currently starts is plenty dark enough, probably.
Okay.
So it's like, dude, please, don't get too dark here. So let's just stay in E minor.
Yeah.
And so there's that, and then working out, literally just doing a voice memo of the song with me playing it on acoustic guitar, and looking at the time clock on it and being like, where do the sections fall?
Yeah.
How long is the song overall? And then sitting with that for maybe a week, and as I go on my walks and all that, what resonates with me, what doesn't. So giving the thing space to breathe.
Because it could be, say, like if you feel you're getting to something too late. Again, song doesn't do it, but sometimes songs even will have, if there's normally a 4-line verse, there may well be one verse that's 2 lines rather than a full 4 or something that enables you to get somewhere quicker. Or
that's right.
Or you may not do the 3. We talked about 3 verses before the chorus. You may go, I can't. It's taken too long. 2 verses are going to have to do it, whatever. So they can problem solve that, can't you? If you notice something in terms of your demo time, you go, what are my options here?
Yeah. And getting a bit ruthless at that point.
Or even get rid of it if you have an intro. Like
I know.
Sometimes you can have a kind of an instrumental intro, can't you?
Yeah.
Do I need the intro?
I know.
In this, like the real hard start, again, adds to the tension, doesn't it? It's just like suddenly we're in. Yeah.
We're in, yeah. And then I send it off to the guys who are going to be working on it, usually about a week before, with a bunch of reference tracks.
Yeah, okay.
And so...
What was an example of a reference track for this? Can you remember?
That's a great question.
Don't worry.
I can't actually remember.
Fine,
I'm sorry. I know I was listening to a lot of... There was a Keith Urban record that came out at the time called The Speed of Now, which was his kind of lockdown record. So I was listening to a lot of that, because Keith Urban's a great curator of contemporary songwriting and contemporary sounds. So he's a country artist, but he stretches across a lot of genres. So I was listening to a lot of that.
It's slightly, there's a darker song, but Fall at Your Feet by Crowded House is quite similar too, right? In terms of that kind of...
The intensity thing.
Yeah. But
So,
that wasn't one of them?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't think
Okay.
so. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But just a whole range of things. And so, because I trust these guys so much as well, I let them sit with it for a week, and then when we get into the studio, or even if they email me back,
They'll have suggestions.
Yeah,
cool.
And they'll be often just a question, or what do you think about? And it gives me time to maybe revise that before we head into the studio.
Yeah, cool.
And then once we get into the studio,
and so having this, I don't know how many listeners are this person, but having too high a view of your artistry that everything is untouchable. You're just setting yourself short, aren't you? To actually be receptive to that stuff rather than no, you got to understand the reason it's you're too defensive, and see that all as an attack. You're missing out on people who want want what's best for the song, right? Yeah.
I think what you said there is key. Who want what's best for the song.
Yeah.
And I think working out how to serve the song is a bit of a overarching principle in this whole process, because it's about you having created it to a certain point, but at a certain point it's about the song.
Yeah.
And you got to let the song be what it wants to be, which sounds super vague, I know, but anyone who writes will get that. That once it's out of your head onto the page, it's its own creation, and you need to kind of work out how to honour that. So getting into the studio, we, it's really unglamorous. We like pull up that tempo and we go, is that the right tempo? And we just strum along to it and we kind of mess around with it a bit. And then, we'll record called a guide track. So it's just vocal and guitar maybe, or vocal and keys or something, with a click track going on at the same time. In the meantime, I'd actually worked out that I wanted to have a loop running in this song. Let me just pull it up here. So I'd sort of found that loop, which I thought would be a good thing to counteract the acousticness of a guitar, and would give a sense of the intensity and the drive. And so we put that into the guide track as well, because it gives a bit of a flavour. And then it's working out, okay, well, what's the instrumentation going to be? And the way studio sessions work is you'll often get a bass player and a drummer in for like a day or two and record all your songs in that batch. It's just a good use of time rather than pulling them in, on different occasions. And so, I think there's a sense of, well, we just pull up this track and just got started. And we had a general sense of the shape that we wanted to go from quite dark to more positive to optimistic. And then I literally just say to the bass player and the drummer, because I trust them so much, have a run.
Yep.
See where you go, playing along to the guide track. And these guys are like super musical. So this is Trent Prees on bass, and this is Matt Drury on drums. Just super musical, get song arrangement, get song form, understand dynamics. And so really they just played through the song. And then there are a few moments where, we might question, like we questioned, should the bridge be 4 times the hold on or 3 times or whatever. But by and large, it just kind of like...
Will you sometimes have a bit of a drum pattern or bass line in your head, sometimes not? Is it a bit...
Yeah, quite often I will.
Yeah, okay.
But again, it's holding that loosely and being like, well, I'm not the expert in that space.
Sure.
Like I'm not a drummer, so I can thrash it out on the drums, but I don't know the drum kit intimately like someone like Matt would. So just trusting their expertise, that's a huge thing, I would say, in the whole process. And then so we get to a place where we've kind of got the whole track eventually kind of built up just through doing that. Like we've got the whole rhythm track built up through doing that. And then I think we probably put down some proper acoustic guitars. So like you redo the guide track and put down an open acoustic guitar. And then we definitely put down some rhythm electric guitars, which are essentially just electric guitar mimicking what the acoustic is doing, like just big open. They sit way in the background. You don't even really notice they're there a lot of the time. But
does it sit in the same octave usually as well? Or does it sit,
in this case, they did.
Yeah, okay.
But then you hit on something really important, which is, okay, then how do we serve the rest of the sound spectrum? So how do we've got the bottom end covered, we've probably got like the mid-range covered. How do we kind of...
Can end up being muddy if everything is just in the...
Yeah, exactly. So then it was like, let's have a look here on the... I've got some like electric guitar, little bell note things. Little things like that. Again, you may not even notice they're there.
Yep.
So what that is actually me at home, just adding those bits after we've done the studio days, because I can mess around with that at home, easily just record, with my electric guitar setup. And so it's not all done in the studio necessarily. It's kind of worked out, along the way, just through iteration. And maybe it's like having a canvas and painting, and then throwing things bit by bit at the canvas and realizing what's needed. So there was this electric guitar solo in this as well. Let's have a little look here. which again, I'm not like an amazing lead guitarist, so I didn't want a big thrashy kind of electric guitar solo, but you know, it's like. Oh, and then we had some backing vocals flown in as well. So some female backing vocals from Bella Bradbeer in Melbourne. And because I just, again, sitting with the track, giving it time to breathe, I was like, I feel like it needs something to contrast my male vocal. It needs a lightness, it needs a breathiness. And so, Bella did some amazing vocals on that.
Yeah.
Just recorded at home and then sent them through, and we just kind of put them in the places they needed to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And where do they need to be? The chorus and also the bridge section?
Pre-chorus, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Or maybe the chorus. Definitely the bridge. I think there's an octave going on in the pre-chorus with the different lives now.
Yeah,
And
which is interesting again as this line that came from somebody else. That's quite a nice touch. Okay, so that's noting at various points ago. There's a little bit of something else we need.
Yeah. But it's really slow.
Yes.
After you do those studio days, it's really slow. We definitely put some synth in as well in the studio. I normally have Andy Judd play keys, but he was not available for this song, I remember, so it was just me and Sean. So I just played some synth and just jumped in on his upright piano and just played kind of block chords to fill out the sound.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, and we've talked about this a bit as well, Mikey is being willing to just take stuff out. And I do remember taking stuff out in the song. Because you can fill it up too much.
Yeah.
And it's a sweet spot. Just because it's good doesn't mean it has to go in. So to serve the song, how do I keep it, sparse enough so there's room to breathe in there. And there's room for the listener to insert themselves. Yeah.
We'll wrap up in just a sec. We have been going now for over an hour. Gosh, time flies, doesn't it? This has been really good, Greg. Yeah, I reckon people find it super interesting. It is good to use an example, I feel like.
For sure.
I think you can then draw out from that what might apply to other things or what doesn't apply.
Yeah.
But what's the experience then? You both then recorded an acoustic version of the same EP, but then you then perform it live with different backing bands or with none, like you did last night. It was just you.
Yeah.
So what does that whole experience, again, it's the song sort of becomes this thing a bit external to you.
Yeah.
And then you suddenly take it back from the recorded kind of artifact and bring it back into the live thing. What's that like? Do you feel like the song has become a different thing there? What do you have to do another bit of work to work out how do I do it live?
Yeah. I mean, this particular song stands up on its own fine on acoustic guitar. I think it works well. But definitely there's a sense of letting go of the recorded version. Yeah. And not trying to replicate that fully. That's the tendency and the desire sometimes, but like to realise, you can't recreate all of that without exactly the same players and without the same sounds and all that. So
there's a bit of negotiation with, say, if you've got a backing band, to go, how are we going to do it tonight? Yeah.
Correct. To let it be its own thing on that day, which I really love. I think, like last night's gig is an example. It comes as part of a connection of songs or a series of songs. So it becomes a part of a story. And so it becomes something to part of the storytelling process as well. And so it's less about musical perfection and more about sort of just enjoying it in that moment as part of that experience, if that makes sense. Yeah. So don't get me wrong, there's a version of doing this live where you have everything like it was on the recording and it's beautiful and you're in a theatre and you have, a 6-person band and the lights are just right and, but in the real world of doing smaller gigs and, just travelling with an acoustic guitar like I did this time, working out how to replicate it and also how to kind of catch some of the dynamics, I think, and maybe imply like the electric guitar solo with like a vocal moment or whatever. But I will say that a bit of a test for me, if I'm going to record a song, is whether it stands up on its own on acoustic. Because I know that ultimately I'll probably end up doing a bunch of solo gigs and I have to be able to enjoy playing it in that way. So even if the produced version is very different to the original demo, often the final live version ends up being quite close to the demo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I recorded an acoustic version of this EP well after I'd recorded the actual songs. And I couldn't have done it the other way around. I needed to fully realise the songs before I worked out exactly how I would play them on acoustic, which is very, very strange.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But even just refining tempos, song structures, keys, all that stuff.
Yeah, so again, one of those things where the listener may not even quite know why it doesn't just sound like someone's bashing out something on a acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
But there is all that stuff actually has made its way through. You can't put your finger on why, but it's all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's just the little details in the painting, you know. And, you know, to any songwriters out there, I'd just say, really enjoy that process. Like, that's a real gift that you can give to the listener, that they, as you say, they may not know whether something's there or why it's there. But I do think just having points of interest is really important as well.
So there's a version of this, and again, we will wrap up, but I suppose there's a version of this as well if you are touring or playing regularly through a set of songs. Something of that same process, like if recording is just out of sight, or someone is listening goes, I can't imagine recording, that's just not where I'm at.
Yeah.
Could be just by the process of playing. If you're not just bashing it out, but attentive to the song, you'll actually work up a better version of the live version of that song by just playing it over time as well, right?
Without doubt. Yeah. And just working out how long an intro needs to be, or how long a solo section needs to be, all that stuff. Yeah, it absolutely gets worked out.
Worked out on the road.
On the road, yeah.
We should finish there, Greg. Thanks so much, man. And I'll post this up. And I guess if people listening, please share it on as well, because we hope it's really useful. I'm not sure if there's as much stuff like this available in Australia anyway. So hopefully there's others who you can share it on and they'll benefit from. And indirectly, it's a win for you too, Greg, right? People get to encounter your music, which is, always the battle as well as raising awareness. So it's a double win. You're helping other people by sharing it, but you're also helping our muso as well. All right, we're done.
Any other time I might be dreaming big, counting my plans on my fingertips, letting my mind wander wherever it wants. Any other time, hit the beach on Saturday, savor the roar of the crashing waves, listen to music like it's the best thing in the world. The whole world's not okay, I don't feel good today. I'm wondering when I'll next get paid, missing the family and friends that make me who I am. We live different lives now, but the same God who loved it is the same God who loves now. Don't give up, no, because the same God who ruled it is the same God who rules now. Don't give up, no, He's got your best at heart. In any other town I might be free to roam, I wouldn't be cooped up here alone, having a hard time believing this will ever end. My old life's disappeared, can't face the news today. Is there anything new they can really say? I can only find some calm after midnight strikes. We live different lives now, but the same God who loved them is the same God who loves now. Don't give up, no, because the same God who ruled it is the same God who rules now. over.